What's going on, everybody? My name is Logan, and welcome to the Conservation Project's first episode of Freedom Fridays, positive news that makes you proud to be an American. I am so excited to be getting into this finally. This is something I've been wanting to do for a while, something to kind of break away once a week from the normal podcast episodes where, let's be honest, right now you're hearing a lot of doom and gloom, a lot of stuff's happening in our nation, in our world, that I wanted to kind of bring it back to focus on something more positive. So let me give you a quick rundown of how this is going to work. Once a week, every Friday, you're going to hear this episode come out, and it's not going to be a long thing. It's going to be short episodes, and it's just going to be giving you some awesome stuff to take into your weekend. We're not going to get into big discussions. It's not going to be anything crazy. I'm just going to give you a bunch of different news articles and postings and all sorts of stuff, all in a rapid-fire format. The whole purpose of it is just to be uplifting, and that's it. So let's just go ahead and get straight into it. I'm going to start with the first one that I saw that just I loved, and it's dog trapped in narrow crevice licked moisture from walls until rescuers found her with plumber's camera. This actually came out yesterday. And when I read this, it just made me happy, man. So just to read the article just for the start, a dog which was trapped in a rocky crevice was successfully rescued unharmed after 5 days without food or water. And the incident started when a woman was hiking with her 12-year-old dog, Liza, who fell out of sight into the narrow crevice but could be heard barking. So long story short, they're trying to, the state park workers attempted to, and unsuccessfully, access the crevice before dark, and they made a bunch of attempts and all this kind of stuff. But eventually, they were able to rescue this dog with a plumber's pipe camera. And this is kind of funny because I've mentioned before, I grew up doing plumbing. Like, this is what I've done. Like, I've been a blue collar worker my whole life. And plumbing was the first trade that I ever learned. And this stood out to me because I've seen this exact thing happen. Not far from me, back when I was working there, one of our guys got called out to an area, and it was just this crazy thing. In the same area, a small dog fell into, or I'm sorry, it was actually a kitten. Now that I'm remembering correctly, it's actually a kitten fell into a crevice in somebody's backyard. They had a huge backyard, and they were on the side of a mountain, and it just fell into this crevice. And after multiple days and using a pipe camera, they were able to rescue this kitten. And this is the exact same thing that happened here. I just thought that was great. I had to throw this one in there because it was a little personal to me because I've actually seen this happen. But it finishes off by saying the dog, while hungry and thirsty, was in good health, and it was later reunited with its owner. It's an awesome story. I had to throw this one out. Good people in the U.S. doing amazing things. So moving on to the next one. This is titled, "Man Finally Gets Beloved Mom's Car 40 Years After Her Death, and It Still Has Her Sunglasses Inside." This is so cool. So a guy named John Barry, he ended up finding his mother's 1971 Oldsmobile Cutlass Supreme convertible. And it was actually purchased by a GM auto executive in the early 80s. And he was never able to recover any of his mother's personal belongings after she passed. And apparently he spent decades hunting for this car. And he eventually found it and stayed in touch with the second owner. And his wife recounts the whole situation and says each time John contacted him, he was never interested in selling the car. But thankfully, he was a car guy and the collector of classic Buick and Chevrolet and Oldsmobile's cars. So they knew that the guy who currently owned the car, he would take good care of it. And he told him that he took good care of it and all this kind of stuff. And then it says, out of the blue one day, he wrote to John saying that he had a change of heart and was ready to pass ownership on to him, knowing it would mean a lot to the original family member. John's wife, Shannon, said, "To say he was thrilled, overjoyed, and unbelievably emotional is an understatement." And man, how couldn't you be? The car is all original. get this, it's all original, has 42,000 miles on the odometer. And once it arrived at his house, he found some of his mom's belongings still in the glove box. Her sunglasses, maps of trips she'd taken, earrings, postage stamps from 1971, and a comb. That if that doesn't put a smile on your face, I don't know what will. That made me that was awesome. I could not help but share that one. All right, so that we're going from that happened in Kentucky, we're going down to New Orleans. This is pretty cool. This is a little bit on the environmental side, but I think this is really neat. So there's an endangered Sumatran orangutan that lives at the New Orleans Zoo, and it's critically endangered. The the orangutan's name is Minari, and there's pictures of it everywhere. And as it turns out, there was only two of them, and it was big news when it came out yesterday, real early yesterday, that Minari is pregnant. Not only is Minari pregnant, she's pregnant with twins. So they're actually, as far as uplifting stuff goes, this is pretty neat, man. I got to tell you, this is a beautiful, beautiful animal. Go look into this. This thing, it's Jambi and Minari. And I might be butchering the names, so I apologize. But they're expecting twins. How awesome is that? I couldn't not throw that one in. They are really hopeful as far as the conservation of this animal. The staff is working really, really hard. They're saying that they're trying to train her for motherhood and all sorts of things. Because there's so few of them, they're actually working very, very intensely with this one, and they're trying to make as much accommodation for this animal as they can. It's an amazing story, and here's something to kind of cap it off with. There's believed to be fewer than 14,000 Sumatran orangutans living in the wild. Um, it's awesome, and the fact that we got that little piece right here in America, right in the South, man, that's really, really, really cool. All right, moving on to the next one. The FDA is taking steps to authorize the over-the-counter hearing aids. Now, I know the FDA is in a lot of hot water right now, and there's a lot of stuff going on. But take what you can, and always look to find the good, because there's a policy that came out in 2015. And the FDA was essentially ordered to create a basic hearing aid design that could be purchased without a prescription or a doctor's visit. And that was passed in the Over-the-Counter Hearing Aid Act of 2017. And so they went full bore into it, but it's a very difficult thing to create. As I've read on this, it was a very lengthy process, and it was just difficult. It was just ballpark. It was just difficult. So if you know, there's a lot of people who know people that have hearing aids, or maybe you have hearing aids. Pretty much every guy in my family has hearing aids. So these hearing aids typically cost around $5,000 a pair, and they're not covered by Medicare, other insurance, or anything like that. So that's why this Over-the-Counter Hearing Aid Act of 2017 became such a big deal for the FDA. And as it turns out, this is actually working. The FDA put out a quote yesterday. Today's move by the FDA takes us one step closer to the goal of making hearing aids more accessible and affordable for the tens of millions of people who experience mild to moderate hearing loss. And that's coming from the Health and Human Services Secretary, Xavier Becerra. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. But I thought this was an awesome thing. And, like I said, you got to take the good and from wherever you can find it. Always take the good from wherever you can find it. And I know, like I said, the FDA is in a lot of hot water with a lot of people because they're very influential with the vaccines, all that kind of stuff. That doesn't matter. This is an awesome thing that's, I don't know. I have some personal connection to this. Like I said, I know a lot of people that have hearing aids, and this was just something really, really cool that I felt like needed to be talked about. All right, on to the next one. This is a great one to talk about because this is going to be something that really connects to the times that we're in right now, and this is from an MSNBC article, and I'm going to read the title here. This young couple lost their side hustle during COVID. Now their startup has $2.5 million in annual sales and a Shark Tank deal. I thought this was really awesome. This kind of exemplified the whole American spirit thing to me. So Ellen Hodges, who's 28, and Omaya Atout, who are 33, when the pandemic set in, they lost their ability to perform live music. They're in New York. They still have their day jobs, but music was more than just a side hustle. They actually, the article says, they relied on their gig income to survive. They were talented musicians, all this kind of stuff. And so what they did, They got, in April of 2020, a friend offered to pay them to write a song for his wedding. And then they had an idea of an app called Songlorious. And it's an online marketplace where musicians can make money by writing and recording songs for people's weddings, birthdays, and other life events. That's coming straight from the article. And Atout said on an episode of Shark Tank that greeting cards, flowers, and they all fall flat because they're kind of impersonal, and sooner or later they end up in the trash. And honestly, they've got a point there. I think that's a valid statement. So as it turns out, this business during the pandemic took off very quickly. They launched it and they received at least 11,000 song requests from more than 160 musicians. After 4 months, they left their day jobs and put all the chips on the table for this one thing. And as it turns out, it really took off. Last year, the company brought in, during the pandemic, $700,000 in sales. And at the time of the Shark Tank episode that just came out, the co-founder said that Songlorious was on pace to bring in $2.5 million this year. And they landed an additional $500,000 from 4 of the 5 sharks, and those were Mark Cuban, Damon John, Kevin O'Leary, and the guest, Peter Jones, in exchange for 40% stake of the company. And it's just amazing. You really need to look them up. I've looked into this, and they are doing some incredible stuff. And this is just American ingenuity at its finest. They had tough times. They had something that they could profit with, and they figured out how to build it. And they openly say that they're not business people. They even openly admit that they aren't business people. That's why they were on Shark Tank, to try to get help in that manner. And honestly, I can't help but look at this and just kind of be touched by it. It's just really something cool when you see that American resolve. And I just thought that was awesome. I had to share it. I wanted to cap it off with that. And I'll leave it at that. Like I said, we're going to keep it short, around 15 minutes. So I want to thank you for joining on this first episode of Freedom Fridays, positive news that makes you proud to be an American. And I'm looking forward to this. Like I said, every Friday you're going to see this. It's never going to have any ads in it or anything like that. I just want to give you something good to take in your weekend and bring your spirits up a little bit. So thank you for joining us here at the Conservation Project. My name is Logan, the podcast for the average Joe that still believes in life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and that we are still one nation under God. Have a great weekend.